What was your "Sir, this is a Wendy's" moment? Story 1. I worked at Walmart for a long time in the hardware department. Had a customer call asking if we sold toilets. I said, like toilet seats? He said, no, like actual toilets. So I said, sorry, we just sell the seats and replacement parts, no porcelain. He got all huffy and said, Jesus, what is this place, Walmart? I paused for a moment and said, yes, sir, it is. Silence for a long moment. Then he said in a little voice, this isn't Home Depot? No, sir, you called Walmart. Oh crap, I am so sorry. And he hung up. I laughed my ass off. Story 2. I was in Lowe's one morning right after they opened. There was a woman at the service desk having a complete meltdown, yelling and screaming because Lowe's didn't have a licensed contractor there at the store for her to hire. She apparently woke up that morning and decided she needed a deck like that the same day and thought she could just go to Lowe's and have someone immediately start building a deck. It was dead, so I stood with the cashier listening to the show. They ended up having to call the police to get her to leave. Story 3. I work as a facilities manager for a company with a few hundred locations around the country. Back at the end of 2020, I was having trouble getting in touch with a vendor we had a contract with to do some work around one of our offices. Nothing big. I figured he just ghosted us, so I began looking for another vendor who could take over the work. After 2 months of radio silence, vendor 1 called me out of the blue and was clearly very drunk and crying at 1 p.m. on a weekday. Turns out he had gotten COVID, was hospitalized, got blood clots in both legs, and had to have them both amputated. He called me while I was at work and told me his whole life story. I ended up staying on the phone with him for about 30 to 45 minutes, and I helped him track down a grief counselor. Hopefully he went. I still wonder how he's doing sometimes. Story 4. I work for a CPA office that is in an office park with a couple doctor's offices. One day, a guy came in only speaking Spanish, so I grabbed my Spanish-speaking colleague to translate. He talked to the guy in the lobby for a few minutes, then the guy left and my coworker came back and asked if that was a joke, or we put someone up to that. Apparently, the guy explained that his testicles were extremely swollen and painful. He was looking for one of the doctor's offices and just walked into the first building in the complex. I'm sure we do taxes here, not testicles. Story 5. Uber driver. Once I had a girl I picked up from a karaoke bar that was obviously upset, distressed. Asked if she was okay. Yeah, I just did karaoke. Oh, that's pretty cool. I did a song for my dad that died a year ago. Oh, that's sweet of you. Nothing else was said until I got her home, which was only a couple blocks away. As I pulled in, this is what she said. I'm not going to give you a bad rating for this, but you could have been more emotionally available for me. I just said, I'm sorry, and had to stop myself from bursting into laughter. I felt bad for her, of course, but that was just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard from a passenger. Especially prefacing it with, I'm not going to give you a bad rating for this, but another time, when I picked up a lady, she was distressed. I asked if I could do anything for her, and she said, not unless you can take back the last 40 years of my life. It was a very silent, awkward ride. Story 6. I've told this story tons of times to my friends' family because it's one of my favorite Domino's stories. This happened somewhere around 2017-2018. One day it was really slow at work at Domino's. I was still a relatively new insider, only a few months into what would be about 4 years, and still in school, so I was hoping that it would stay slow so I could go home so I can cheat on my math homework, play some League of Legends, and get some sleep since my school started an hour earlier than other schools in the area. A woman, probably mid-40s, comes in to order a pizza. She's pretty chill, and we're just chatting while she's ordering because there really isn't much to do otherwise since we already cleaned the store and oven and all that. After she gets her pizza all done up, I ask her if she'd like any drinks. She's like, oh, what do you guys have? I'm running down the drink options and she notices Coca-Cola and looks at me wide-eyed like she just saw someone get hit by a car. Don't you know they put human embryos in Coke? I'm sorry? She then spends the next 7 minutes running down pretty much every major conspiracy, from human embryos and Coca-Cola to flat Earth, to the moon landing being faked, etc. If you think of a pre-COVID conspiracy, she hit it. And she tied it all up in a neat little bow of, it's all the Jews. I'm stun-locked. The only words that can come out of my mouth are, so no on the drink? Coke Zero, please. I guess the zero means zero embryos. Story 7. Got one. A nice lady walks into the cinema I work in, asks for a ticket, yada yada. We start chatting a bit while I ring her up. Explain how the cinema works, etc. It was a slow day too, so I could actually do that. And that's when she asks me what hall to go to. I explain to her she has access to all of them. She can just pick wherever she goes first. Cue this. Okay, that's great. Where's the Barbie movie in, though? What do you mean, Barbie movie? Lady looks around, realizes things are very fucky. Oh no. Oh, I see it too now. Yeah, this isn't this kind of cinema. Let me reimburse you. Turns out she literally managed to miss every DVD rental case, the posters, and interior decor of the porn cinema she walked into. Story 8. I worked in a local cafe newsstand convenience store type spot. We also had a Ticketmaster outlet for a bit. Our small town had an annual concert that usually ran 2 or 3 nights. It was really popular with the local folks, so it brought in a lot of foot traffic with people buying tickets. My boss was honestly a small business mastermind. That was the extent of our involvement. We sold and printed gate passes. On the night of one of the events, I was closing the store as usual at 10 p.m. An irate woman called wanting to file a noise complaint about the concert. I was like, ma'am, you must have the wrong number. This is a local cafe. She insisted that she was filing an official noise complaint and demanded to speak to the owner right now. 10 p.m. on a Friday? Yeah, he's not here. He also isn't the police and doesn't deal with noise complaints. Also, it's only 10 p.m. and this concert has been widely advertised for months. She then went on a wild rant that we needed to do something about the noise since we sold tickets. She wouldn't let me off the call and was going berserk. I told her I was going to disconnect since we had nothing to do with the event or the noise. She called back multiple times and finally I just let the phone ring. Was still ringing when we locked up. Ma'am, are you okay? Story 9. I worked at Wendy's throughout high school and some lady ordered a burger meal at the drive-thru. Over an hour later, she comes back to the front counter, slamming the burger on it saying it was cold. I checked our receipts and told her she ordered over an hour ago and that burgers aren't meant to stay hot for that long. She said that was absolutely unacceptable, and how dare we serve her a burger that gets cold. She then proceeds to ask me for my full name and details so she could sue me, at the same time freaking out when I didn't have a pen to give her to write down my info. Another customer walking by said, "Holy shit, lady, relax," and she yells at him to mind his business. He says, "Well, I just feel bad for this poor employee you're yelling at. If you don't want to eat here, go somewhere else." Bless his soul. I was only 17 and was so shaken. Story 10. I automate dumb buildings with temperature control systems. Something I get a lot is all of this equipment was working before you touched it. Now none of it works. The best ones, and my favorite ones, are when we get that call on a unit we haven't even touched. Unit 1? You're calling about Unit 1? Yeah, it was working fine before your guys touched it, and now it's not running. Okay, well, we started working on the other side of the building first, and we haven't begun tying into the units yet, so that unit is all on you. Oh. Story 11. I worked in a cell phone store that had a veteran support office behind us. One day, an older gentleman was waiting in the queue. When it was his turn, I called him up and asked what I could help him with. He stepped up to the counter and told me that the Veterans Hospital was claiming his vision impairment was only 20% disability, and he felt it was much higher. I agreed, and I offered to walk him to the correct building and told him I would be a witness for him. Story 12. I used to have a job working as a front desk third shift concierge at a swanky apartment tower. Very exclusive. NFL players, NBA players, MLB players, high-end all around. The top floor is a penthouse owned by the owner of a modeling firm. Paid like shit. One night, 2 girls come in, wanting to purchase a few things from the residence dispensary, like an in-house 7-Eleven. I just get a room number and it gets tacked onto the monthly rent. While one is getting a few things, the other decides to tell me her life story and is asking me for advice on all these life-changing things she's thinking about doing. When the other was done shopping, she came over to the counter and the two of them just chatted with me for a couple hours, asking for my advice on everything. And I mean everything. I felt like a therapist for them. After a while, they wanted me to come upstairs and party with them and the friend they were visiting. I assumed they were at least a little drunk, but they had been there for a while and they weren't getting any more sober. And then the person who they were visiting, a lawyer who lived in the building, came down and was like, "Where the hell have you two been?" and ushered them upstairs. Next day at the start of my shift, he was waiting for me. He apologized profusely and gave me a $200 tip and asked me to not mention the 2 girls to anyone. Apparently they were a pair of escorts and were high as a fucking kite on ecstasy. Story 13. I had a car for sale and an influencer called me up and said they would like to use my car for a podcast. They said, "You need to have your car at," and I cut them off and said, "I'm sorry, did you just tell me that I need to deliver a car you are asking to borrow for no money?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, okay, just send me a retainer of 1/4 the price of the car and you can borrow it. I don't know you." She said, "I don't have that much money." I said, "Well, I do, so who the hell in their right mind tells the person they are asking for a favor where to be and what to do?" She got really angry and explained to me who she was, then told me, "I can destroy your business in minutes with a negative comment." I couldn't stop laughing. I am an architect and normally work for corporations. She said, the people do as I demand, and I have 90,000 followers. I said, cool, have every one of your followers send you money so you can borrow my car. And then hung up. I got 4 emails from her loyal followers. 4. Story 14. I own a drywall company and our shop is in a giant storage unit complex for big RVs, like $500K to $1 million RVs. So the bays are gigantic. A lot of contractors have their shops there. The front building is shared between myself and a power washing company. We both have signage up clearly stating drywall business, power washing business. One day my crew was at the shop loading up equipment, and some older guy came up and wanted to rent a storage unit. My guys gave him the info for the owners, which is on a big sign by the road that says RV storage units with all the info. He just ignored them, pulled out his checkbook and said, "Who do I make this check out to?" "I want to rent Unit 12 again." My guys pointed to our business sign clearly stating drywall business. He then got aggravated and asked when we were open so he could get a unit. Finally, my crew leader told him the boss would be back in a couple hours so he would leave them alone. Guy never came back. Story 15. I used to run a free food bank for HIV-positive clients in a healthcare organization. Most days of the week, clients could come and shop at the bank for their items. One day each week, however, we offered pre-packed bags, this was clearly communicated to clients, to cut down on wait time, as the bank could get very busy and backed up while people chose their items. On those days, we had a strict, you get what you get and you don't get upset policy, since the whole point of the pre-packed day was speed. One fateful pre-packed bag day, a client who came in was adamantly displeased with the juice offering in her bag. She returned to my window to insist on a juice trade. I politely refused and told her that she was welcome to come back another day to choose her items. She proceeded to scream all manner of creative profanities at me and throw the family-sized juice at my head. I'm aware of the strain that living in compromised positions, medical or otherwise, can place on people. I am also aware that throwing juice is not generally rational, effective, or respectful. It just results in spilled juice, and that's no fun for anyone. Story 16. I used to work for Kmart. Someone came into the store and wanted to know where the pet department was located. We only had one aisle of pet items, and it was mostly items for dogs, cats, food, litter, toys, etc. I took the customer to the aisle and they said, "This is it? This is all you have for pet supplies? You don't have an actual department like other stores?" "Yes, sir, we just carry the basics. If you need a bigger selection, there is a Pet Supplies Plus located at the other end of the plaza." The customer got upset and said, "But if I wanted to go to Pet Supplies Plus, I would have gone there. But I wanted to go to Kmart, so I'm guessing you don't have fish food or anything like that?" I showed him the same selection of fish food, and he got upset. He then started asking advice for fish tanks, and again I directed him to the Pet Supplies Plus that was located just a couple storefronts down from Kmart. When he insisted on not going to that store, I gave him directions to 2 other pet stores in the area. Eventually he left, but not before saying, "This is why Kmart is going out of business." Sure, buddy, the lack of a pet department is the sole reason Kmart is going out of business. Story 17. Used to work in a musical instrument shop, pianos in the window, a single file path to the counter that went through about 20 pianos and keyboards. The counter is a giant novelty guitar amp, with guitars hung on every free inch of wall space. Lady comes in, trips over a couple piano stools, in her rage-filled stomp over to the counter, slams a receipt on the counter and immediately starts shouting. Conversation was as follows. "Lady, I ordered this TV 4 weeks ago and it's still not arrived. What sort of business are you running here?" Me. "Well, that must be frustrating for you, but I'm sorry to say we sell instruments, not TVs. I think you're looking for the Sony shop a couple of doors down the road." "Lady, so you're calling me a liar? I bought a $500 TV from this shop 4 weeks ago. I'm not stupid, I can see the TV on the wall." Me. "So that single TV is the one we use to monitor CCTV and let customers know they're on camera. We have a lot of issues with theft and stock loss. Again, I think you want to be talking to Sony staff. The shop is like 50 meters down the road, and your receipt says Sony. This is not Sony. We don't sell Sony items here. We sell guitars and pianos." "Lady, where is your manager? I was in this shop 4 weeks ago, and one of you sold me a TV that hasn't shown up. There were TVs on the wall like that, and speakers like those you have over there. You're a liar, and you're calling me a liar or stupid. Either way, I want my refund now." Me. "Well, I am the manager. I have worked here for 4 years and can guarantee you we have never sold a TV to yourself or anybody else. You're being rude and you need to leave now." Best part is she threw the receipt at me and a couple racist slurs, then stormed out. She comes back in 5 minutes later and starts shouting whilst I'm helping an actual customer, "Where did you put my receipt?" You stole it, didn't you? I pulled her receipt out the bin as it was just resting on top, gave it back to her, and gave her a sickly sweet smile. So did you find the correct shop at the end, or are you just going up and down the road berating random shop workers? She got a bit dumbfounded and just stood with her mouth moving but no sound coming out, so I held the door open. Pointed at the giant Sony sign visible from the doorway. That is the Sony shop, by the way. Good luck. Story 18. I work as a cashier at a home goods store. I'm very friendly and honestly treasure my customer interactions. I was doing my usual pattern. Hi there, how are you doing? Did you find everything all right? And this lady tells me that it's the first time she's been out of the house in a while. I thank her for choosing store and moving on with the transaction. She raises her shirt, shows me a huge angry red incision on her stomach, and starts telling me about her recent hysterectomy. The stitches hadn't even been removed yet. I sort of nod and smile and try to pivot to her total so I can move on with the massive line that's building, and she won't stop talking. I had to call for a backup cashier while getting a very detailed description of surgery, uterine cancer, and the recovery process. She didn't drop her shirt the entire time. Story 19. Recently completed a construction project with my neighbor. He was a complete idiot and dicked us around every step of the way until finally we just said fuck it and let him finish up the last little bit on his own. We went over to settle up the material costs, as we'd agreed upon from the start. He immediately starts ranting about how we owe him $2,000 because we didn't help finish the project, so we owe him for his labor. We pointed out that he took it upon himself to work on it while we were at work or at 9 p.m. and refused any communication about actually planning times to work on it. He would just go out there, start working, and expect us to join him. Yes, even if we weren't home. He told us we should have been waiting around every day just in case he decided it was a good time for him to work on it. He also didn't keep any receipts from any of the materials he purchased. But don't worry, bro, I wrote down all the numbers. You can totally trust me, bro. Obviously, we told him that was just stupid and we wouldn't be giving him shit, but our share of the material costs. And then only when he could cough up some actual proof of what he spent. He got really frustrated and started screaming, "I'm under pressure, man! My boat broke. It needs a new motor!" And then he just kept screaming about his boat and ran into his house. Hasn't looked either of us in the face since. I guess I at least understand why he needed to try to swindle us for $2,000. Story 20. So my family owns an old-fashioned Chinese restaurant. One of those places that have like 100 menu items with massive portions because it was from way back when. So I'm taking an order and this woman gets her kids together. The son, who's a teenager, I think, asks, "Do you guys have Thai tea?" I said no. The little girl whispers something to her mom and mom asks, "You have sticky rice?" No. Some girl who's younger than the teenager says, "Oh, I don't see pho here." At this point, I'm screaming in the back of my head. This restaurant has been open since before my uncle was born. At that time, you Americans thought that fried rice was exotic. Nobody was worried about oxtail soup, chilled tea with cream, and rice steamed in a bamboo. If you would like, you can drive 5 minutes down the street to the Lao restaurant that serves that. I know the owner and will give him your order. So my aunt notices me from the register and in our language asks me what's taking so long to get their order. I told her what they were asking for. She tells me, "Send them down the street where they serve that stuff. We don't do that here." I got their order and told my cousin about it. She says, "Well, that's technically Asian food. It's not stupid to ask. Don't walk into a Chinese restaurant and ask for Thai tea or Vietnam's most famous noodle soup dish."